Syria is being divided up for colonial rule. It's so much so that here is the headline from the Wall Street Journal, a far right-wing, unhinged rag. The Middle East is up for grabs.
Wow.
And this is something that the U.S. and Israel and some other nations have been working towards for decades, to collapse these countries and basically divide them up. And Syria is being, like, literally, you can see how it's being divided up. There's a third of it is, quote unquote, owned by the U.S., mainly the oil fields and the wheat fields. The U.S. has had control of that for like a decade now, or a long time. Then you have a portion that Turkey is quickly moving to take over. And then you have a portion that Israel is quickly moving to take over. Furthermore, over the past several days, Israel has moved to destroy, to obliterate anything that is Syrian defenses. So they've blown up their aircraft, their helicopters, their missile depots, anything that Israel, and I imagine Israel probably pretty well knows where all Syrian weapons are. It's all been blown up so far by Israel. And yet Netanyahu gave a speech where he said, we will not be meddling in Syria. So Netanyahu, true to his word, thank goodness.
Well, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy all around. And this gets to Al-Qaeda's taking over Syria, but Israel wants to make sure they can't become a formidable force at all. Sure, Israel's fine and the U.S. is fine with them decapitating people in the streets when they feel like it, but they just want to make sure they don't have a powerful army that could actually challenge someone like Israel. And so if they just obliterate it, they're basically turning Syria into Libya. It's like Libya is competing warlords, and for a while there had open air slave markets, and NATO and the U.S. have just collapsed Libya. And it's not that the U.S. wants to run Libya. It's that the U.S. wants Libya to be so collapsed that it's of no threat. It can't stop the U.S. It doesn't have the power to start selling all their oil outside of petrodollars, functioning outside of the SWIFT system, which they were doing under Gaddafi. They're basically doing the same thing to Syria that they did with Libya. And here is Gaddafi talking about, this is an old clip of Gaddafi talking about the plans for Syria. They are adamant on the removal of Syria and Lebanon on their map, and that they will limit them to Turkey. You can see where our children have been, but what is going to happen? That Syria and Lebanon will be removed so as not to leave Israel's limits with Turkey. The Israelis wrote a plan for an Arab country, meaning Egypt's plan and Syria's plan. Egypt has a map for 4 countries, Syria 5 small states, Lebanon countries and continents. This map exists, and it says so. He's basically saying that there's a long-term plan to make sure that Israel is not bordered by a Syria that is contentious to them. And they seem to have largely achieved that goal now, because Al-Qaeda's taken over. So, and here's another throwback clip. This is when the U.S. says the quiet part loud. I've played other clips. Of course, the clip of Donald Trump saying we got the oil in Syria. We have troops there because we got the oil. But this clip posted by Afshin Rattanzi is from the ex-Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense back in 2019. And she says the quiet part loud as well.
The United States still had compelling forms of leverage on the table to shape an outcome that was more conducive and protective of U.S. interests. And we identified 4. So the first one was the 1/3 of Syrian territory that was owned via the U.S. military with its local partners, wow, Syrian Democratic Forces. Now, this was a light footprint on the U.S. military.
She just said 1/3 of Syria is owned by the U.S. That was this is in 2019, so it was already, the U.S. already, quote unquote, owned that.
Yeah, there's a word for when a military owns something. It's called an occupation.
It's called an occupation. It's called an invasion. She then goes on to say it's a light footprint on the U.S. military because there's only 900 troops there. So as long as we're not harming our military much while we occupy or steal other people's countries and their resources, then that's really cool, because it's a light footprint. It's a nice little touch.
Only about 1,000 troops over the course of the Syria Study Group's report, and then the tens of thousands of forces, both Kurdish and Arab, under the Syrian Democratic Forces. And that 1/3 of Syria is the resource rich, it's the economic powerhouse of Syria. So where the hydrocarbons are, which obviously is very much in the public debate here in Washington these days, as well as the agricultural powerhouse. But we argued that it wasn't just about this one.
She then says the hydrocarbons, meaning oil. That's a nice euphemism to make you sound really smart when you're saying oil.
Yeah, that was an hydrocarbon.
Then she said the agricultural powerhouse powerhouse, which means basically the wheat fields, the breadbasket of Syria. She is saying outright, deputy of defense, deputy in the Pentagon, they're saying outright that the U.S. is occupying the third of Syria that mainly has the oil and the breadbasket. And
the hydrocarbons and the carbohydrates.
The hydrocarbons and the carbohydrates.
You got to give credit to that.
Well done.
And that's why I'm here, folks.
The New York Times crossword just celebrated.
Yeah.
It's got the energy, both oil and calories.
Yes. There you
The
go.
energy of Syria. So this is how Syria ended up with this, along with other economic sanctions, ended up with 94% of their people in extreme poverty because the U.S. took away anything that would allow them to have any kind of okay life that wasn't poverty. And this is her bragging about this, right? This is we did it. We did it. This gives us leverage. And now her point, is basically like we can use these things to collapse Assad. And now they've succeeded, along with arming Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, ISIS. That is who now runs Syria. And I'd be very surprised if in the next year you don't find that, first of all, Israel continues to take parts of Syria, Turkey takes the parts they want, the U.S. continues to hold their third, and other than that, it basically looks like Libya. It's competing warlords and no threat to Israel. And there are other aspects of this, such as taking down Syria interrupts the supply line to Hezbollah and Hamas. So there are other factors in why Israel wanted this to happen so much. But